They called me irrelevant. Then the judge revealed I saved his daughter's life. Maplewood was the kind of town that seemed frozen in time, where every face was known, and every whisper bounced off the cracked sidewalks like thrown stones. Peter lived alone in a weathered little house at the edge of town, fading into the background like a forgotten photograph. Once, he'd been the guy people called a hero, a nurse who saved lives when every second counted. Now, the town just called him irrelevant, invisible, a ghost. But that stormy night changed everything. The sky cracked open with wild thunder and blinding flashes. Inside the crumbling community hall, the charity event buzzed with forced smiles and stiff, polite chatter. Out of nowhere, chaos erupted. A rigging snapped. Spotlights tumbled like metal snakes crashing through the air. The crowd gasped. Screams shredded the air. Mary, the judge's daughter, everyone's perfect. Untouchable Mary was crushed beneath the wreckage. Her body was battered, fragile as porcelain shards. Panic rippled through the room. Her father, stern Judge Henley, stormed forward, his face twisted in horror and controlled rage. Doctors arrived late, confused, tangled up in town politics and rumors that clung like shadows. A frantic race against time began to keep Mary alive. Her damaged organs screamed for a transplant, a rare, impossible miracle only a few knew how to manage. Peter heard the whispers, recognized the signs. Every muscle in his chest tightened with urgent fire. His hands trembled, remembering years of saving lives on the edge. But the judge? He wouldn't listen. To him, Peter was a nobody, a relic best left in the dark. "We don't need ghosts meddling in this," Judge Henley spat, eyes cold and accusing. Peter watched from his dim kitchen window, heart pounding against a cage of doubt. He had the knowledge, the skill, the experience Mary's life hung on. Yet the town's thick wall of prejudice pushed him aside. Invisible, forgotten, irrelevant. Ticking clocks and distant sirens wrapped the town in restless tension. Inside the hospital, the fight for Mary's survival boiled over. Bureaucracy snarled at every turn. Paperwork, red tape, cold refusals. The people who controlled the fate of Mary's fragile life couldn't look past their own biases. And then, a whispered secret slipped through the cracks. Something that could shatter the judge's iron grip and change everything. Someone close to him was tied to the accident. A truth dangerous enough to unravel the whole town. Peter stood on the edge, the weight of those silent judgments pressing down on him like a storm about to break. Step forward and risk everything, or stay hidden in the shadows, watching a life slip away. His phone rang, shattering the thick, heavy silence. The caller ID was unknown. A chill ran down his spine. The voice on the other end carried a question darker than the storm outside. Who really set this tragedy in motion? And would Peter find the courage to unmask the truth before the night swallowed them all? Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And since you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know each incredible person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The static crackled in Peter's ears as the phone call continued. The voice on the line, low and gravelly. What if I told you, Mary isn't who you think she is? His heart jolted. What do you mean? The shadows in the room thickened, swallowing him whole. James, her boyfriend, he's not just a kid. He's someone powerful. And he's been hiding secrets that could ruin everything. Peter's thoughts spiraled. How could James, sweet, charming James, who always smiled at every gathering, be tangled in something so dark? His breath caught, a mix of disbelief and urgency puncturing the quiet. "What kind of secrets?" The voice hesitated, then rushed on. "Not just secrets, Peter. You need to know what happened earlier tonight. Mary wasn't just at that charity event by chance." Outside, thunder rumbled, a warning from the sky. Peter's mind raced. The town turned cold and dark. James and Mary had it all. The perfect life, the perfect image. But there was something deeper. Something like an unspoken truth lurking beneath their smiles. "Listen, you need to find the judge," the voice said urgently. "He's at the hospital. He doesn't know, but you do." Peter's pulse raced. He remembered the way Judge Henley looked at him, like he was nothing, just a ghost in the town's history. But it didn't matter now. Mary needed him, and so did Judge Henley. He grimaced. Maybe they all needed him. He swallowed hard and rushed out of his house. The storm lashed against him, rain drumming on the asphalt like 1,000 footsteps, pushing him forward. The hospital glowed in the distance, a beacon in the storm. But as he drew closer, shadows shifted, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Inside, the air was thick. Nurses hurried, voices clashed, tension crackled. Peter spotted Judge Henley pacing, his face chiseled into lines of worry. He needed truth. Before he could move, a scream pierced the chaotic air. Panic erupted, swarming through the hall. He turned, and there was Mary, unconscious and sealed in a glass case, surrounded by frantic doctors. But then he saw it. James, his eyes wide, his hands covered in something dark. The world blurred as a bomb dropped in his mind. "James!" he shouted, the name like a war cry. The room silenced momentarily, everyone turning to face him. But it wasn't just the drama of a crisis that caught their attention. James' face twisted, panic turning into a hardened mask. "You don't understand," he yelled, his voice cracking. "She was never meant to be here." A chill crept along Peter's spine. The weight of those words held the room hostage. What had he just walked into? The crowd murmured, faces painted with shock and judgment. And then Judge Henley stepped forward. His eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, James? What are you hiding?" James took a faltering step back, glancing around as if seeking escape. His hands trembled, and the room crackled with electricity. "I didn't mean for this to happen. It wasn't supposed to end like this." The air felt electric. Peter trembled, questions surging. Who was lying? Who was the real villain? Was Mary just a pawn in someone else's game? And just as the storm outside grew fangs with lightning, Peter knew. What if this town's darkness stretched far deeper than he'd ever imagined? As the chaos continued, he felt the first fissures of trust cracking all around him. This storm wasn't just the weather. It was the beginning of something monstrous. "Mary!" Peter screamed into the suffocating silence as a final question echoed in the air. Who would survive when the truth finally came crashing down? The tension in the air felt like a fist, tightening around everyone in the room. Peter stood there, heart racing, every breath a struggle. "Mary!" he shouted again, but all eyes were on James, who seemed a world away, caught in his own storm. "What do you mean, James?" Judge Henley demanded. His voice cut through the chaos, sharper than any scalpel. "You have to tell us. What happened?" James trembled, staring back at the judge. The crowd leaned in, hopeful and horrified at the same time. But suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the hallway, pulling everyone's attention like a spotlight. The hospital's automatic doors slammed open, a whirlwind of flashing lights flooding inside. Peter felt his pulse quicken. Emergency responders rushed in, voices overlapping, urgency saturating the air. Then came the shout that sent chills skittering down Peter's spine. "Code Blue in the ER. We need a team, now." Panic flickered in Judge Henley's eyes. He spun around, muscles taut like a wound-up spring. In that instant, Mary wasn't the only one who needed saving. The chaos morphed, and the atmosphere thickened, layered with dread. But before he could step back into the fray, another figure emerged from the shadows. A man, shadowy and hooded, slipped through the sliding doors unnoticed. He moved with purpose, undeterred by the chaos. A chill ran down Peter's spine. Who was this? The man stopped near the entrance, eyes locking on James with an intensity that felt like fire. "You messed up," he sneered, voice low and heavy. "It's time to pay the price." "Who the hell are you?" James shouted, eyes darting around, the panic turning to rage. "Someone you shouldn't have crossed," the figure replied, stepping closer. Suddenly, he pulled back his hood, revealing a familiar face. It was Lucas, a face Peter hadn't seen in years, a former friend turned outcast. Lucas. Peter gasped, memories flooding back like a wave. What was he doing here? "Shame on you, James. You thought you could play this game without consequences?" Lucas's voice cut through like glass. "What are you talking about?" James recoiled, confusion painted across his face. But Lucas took a step forward, his eyes glittering with something darker. "Mary was never meant to be a part of this world," he said defiantly. "You wanted the perfect picture, but you can't outrun your past." She was just collateral damage. Bile rose in Peter's throat. What did Lucas mean? The crowd murmured, shocked gasps spilling into the icy air. Every breath hung heavy with fear and doubt. "Stop! This isn't the time for riddles," Judge Henley barked, fists clenched tight. "Isn't it?" Lucas shot back, a bitter smile twisting his lips. "This is exactly the time, Judge. Your daughter is in danger, way more than you know." James's face blanched. "What did you do?" Then came the shocking twist. "I know about the deal," Lucas said, steadying his voice. "The deal you made, to keep everything hidden, to protect Mary." Time froze. The murmurs grew louder, the shock thickening like a fog. No one saw it coming. Peter felt like the ground had crumbled beneath him. "Deal?" Judge Henley echoed, voice cracking. "What are you saying?" Lucas smirked. "You may think you hold all the cards, but Mary was only safe for as long as no one found out what was at stake." And then, the unimaginable happened. A medical alert rang out from a nearby room. "Code Blue in room 203. We have a patient down. Repeat, Code Blue." Everything spiraled into chaos. Judge Henley's eyes widened, realization dawning. Just as he turned to race towards the source, the ground beneath Peter felt unsteady. Suddenly, Lucas charged forward, hand darting into his coat. In one swift motion, everything exploded into a cacophony of shouting, scrambling bodies, and raw panic. "Stay back!" The shout echoed as silence fell, hearts pounding as if they'd left their chests. The room held its breath. Whatever secrets lay beneath this tragedy were about to surface, and nobody was safe any longer. As Peter watched in horror, his heart screamed with one desperate thought. What on earth had he just stepped into? The air felt electric, charged with unease as Peter stood frozen, heart hammering in his chest. James was spiraling, panic flickering in his eyes, while Judge Henley stood rigid, tension radiating like heat waves. The threat was so palpable, it wrapped around them, squeezing tight. Just then, a sudden explosion of sound shattered the atmosphere. A low, raucous alarms blared while fluorescent lights flickered ominously. A figure appeared, frantic, dangerous, filled with chaos. "Get back! Everyone move!" shouted a new voice, rough and wild. A man burst through the emergency room doors, a gash above his eyebrow bleeding profusely, clothes torn and dirty, desperation etched into every feature. He looked like he had just clawed his way out of hell. "She's awake! Mary's awake!" he screamed. Silence fell, despite the ongoing chaos. Everyone stopped in their tracks, breaths catching. The nurses froze, the doctors halted mid-step, and Judge Henley's eyes widened in disbelief. Mary was alive? Peter's stomach dropped. The rush of hope tethered to fear twisted within him. "What do you mean awake?" he shouted, pushing past the crowd, fighting to reach the man. "Where is she? Is she okay?" Suddenly, another shout echoed from the opulent hospital hallway. "Everyone! We need help here!" The frantic sound drew even more chaos as bodies began to move. The mood shifted like a pendulum, from frozen surprise to surge of action. Peter and the man locked eyes, and something shifted. "I'm telling you, she's awake! But there's something we have to tell you!" He stepped closer, urgency collapsing the space between them. "What? What happened?" Peter could feel the earth shake beneath him, the weight of everything pressing down, all too heavy to carry. Before the man could answer, a commotion erupted behind him. From the shadows of the hallway, a flash of hair shone. It was Mary. Unstayed, bloodied, but alive. "Mary!" Judge Henley's voice broke, a raw crack of relief, mixed with the agony of 1,000 questions. But what came next toppled them all over the edge. Mary stood, her eyes wide and wild, and then she pointed. "No! No! Stay back!" she cried, her voice laced with panic. "He'll kill you all!" The crowd gasped in unison. Confused glances passed between families and friends. Her words were an eruption of horror. So many mouths gaped, but no one dared to move, as if the venom in her voice held them in place. "Who will kill us?" Peter shouted, his heart racing, fear filling the empty spaces. "Mary, what do you mean?" Lucas smirked. "Seems like our little Mary has some secrets of her own," he sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm and venom. "Should we tell them the truth, Mary? Or will you?" With panic rising, Mary's expression shifted to something darker and cold. "You don't understand," she said in a shaking whisper, eyes wide with terror. "You don't know what I've done." "What?" The words hung heavy, sinking like scones into the sea. The hopes that had sparked within Peter flared out. James stepped forward, horrified. "Mary, what do you mean? You didn't—" But she interrupted him, her voice rising, frenzied with fear. "I wasn't supposed to be here, not tonight, but I had to. I couldn't let you go through with it." The room silenced again, each eye locked on her, confusion blooming like a storm. What was happening? Then she looked past Peter. Her face went pale. "No, he's here!" she screamed. An icy grip wrapped around Peter's heart. He turned, but what he saw made his blood run cold. From the shadows emerged another figure, cloaked in darkness, a face shrouded, but glowing faintly with familiar recognition. It was tormenting, vexing, and almost too much to bear. "Dad," the figure said softly, stepping closer, revealing a face alight with malice. "I believe it's time for you to learn the real truth about Mary and us." Shock rippled through the crowd. The ground beneath Peter shifted again, and he felt like everything he thought he knew about Mary, about the judge, about the scorn they were caught in, was shattering. Each revelation felt like a dagger, twisting deeper. As the weight of that revelation dropped, all breath vanished from Peter's lungs. Was this the moment everything unraveled? What other secrets were hidden beneath their lives? Who was truly in danger now? The thunder outside roared, drowning out his thoughts. But all Peter knew was that the storm was just beginning. The room was thick with tension. The revelation hung like a guillotine above their heads. Mary, eyes wide with fear, pointed a shaking finger at the figure emerging from the shadows. "Dad, he's coming for you! He's going to kill you!" The crowd gasped, faces pale, stunned. Peter's heart raced, ready to leap from his chest. Judge Henley's expression transformed from shock to recognition, and his voice cracked. "What do you mean?" he demanded. "What do you know, Mary?" But before she could answer, Lucas stepped forward, his confidence fueling the uncertainty. "He's always been the puppet master, hasn't he, Mary? You just didn't know you were one of his strings." "What?" James shouted, rage and confusion battling in his eyes. "What is this? Who are you talking about?" Just then the quiet hum of machinery was shattered by another thunderous crash from down the hall. The lights flickered and dimmed, plunging them into unsettling shadows. "What the hell was that?" a nurse yelled, darting toward the sound. Then an explosion. The walls shook, plaster crumbling. People screamed, running, desperate to escape the chaos. The emergency alarms blared, sending shockwaves through the crowd. "Mary!" Peter shouted, his voice swallowed by shockwaves of panic. He grabbed her arm, eyes igniting with urgency. "What do we do? Who's coming?" And that's when she broke. "It's him, my real father. He wants the truth, and he'll burn anyone in his way." Her words struck like a thunderclap. The truth? What truth? Peter tried to wrap his head around it, but the pieces just wouldn't fit. In the maelstrom, Judge Henley turned ghostly pale. "Your real father?" he whispered, disbelief melting into understanding. "Mary, what do you mean?" But before she could reply, the figure in the shadows stepped forward. The hood fell back, revealing not a stranger, but a face Peter recognized. Adam, Mary's father. He had been in the picture somehow, woven into the threads they never saw. "Mary, honey," Adam said, his voice a slick whisper. "It's time you knew everything. The deal you think your father made to protect you?" He smiled. But it was cruel. A knife hidden in silk. That was just the start. "I'm coming to collect." Peter felt the air stir as whispers surged through the crowd. This man, the one they thought was gone, suddenly redefined all they knew. A nurse cried out, stumbling back as Mary collapsed against the wall, fear dragging the color from her face. "No, no, it can't be. You're lying." "No, sweetheart," Adam said, stepping into the light, his expression dark. "I'm not lying. I've always been here, just waiting for the perfect moment to make my move." Peter's gut twisted. "What do you want?" he demanded. But before Adam could answer, another loud boom reverberated through the hallway. It felt like the whole building was coming down. People rushed toward the exit, but Peter couldn't move. The puzzle pieces were twisting, and he struggled to keep up. Then Mary let out a strangled cry. "You don't know what he's capable of." Her hand shook, and behind her eyes was a storm that he could hardly bear to look at. "He'll stop at nothing. He'll hurt everyone." Suddenly, a flickering shadow broke away from Adam, darting toward Mary. The movement was swift, too fast to process. "No!" Peter roared, racing toward them, uncertainty buzzing through his veins. But in the chaos, Adam raised a hand, revealing a glimmering object, a knife. The crowd gasped, terror crashing like waves. Time seized in that moment, every heartbeat echoing with dread. Then, just as Mary stepped back, her face pale and terrified, another figure surged out. James. He lunged, not for Mary, but for Adam. "Stay away from her, you bastard!" Everything exploded. Hands collided with bodies. Chairs toppled. Voices blended into a symphony of chaos and fear. In that split second, Peter knew they were all trapped in a web woven with lies, betrayal, and dark secrets. But one truth resonated louder than the chaos. Someone might not make it out alive. And as he scanned the room, fear racing through him, he realized they would all need to choose a side. The truth was darker than he ever imagined. And now, with the storm raging outside, this fight was only just beginning. The room trembled with chaos, every heartbeat echoing the rising storm of fear. Peter stood frozen, the weight of the knife shining in Adam's hand thickening the air. James lunged again toward Adam, fueled by desperation. But before he could reach him, before anyone could react, an earth-shattering crash erupted from down the hall. Metal scraped against metal. A shriek of pain slicing into the air. An older nurse, face pale and frantic, dragged something behind her, something wrapped in a blood-soaked blanket. "Help! We need help now!" she cried, her voice cracking under the pressure. Mary's eyes widened, recognition bathes her features, and she stumbled back against the wall, hands trembling. "No! Oh God, not him! Not now!" "Mary, what's wrong?" Peter yelled, but she couldn't respond. The crowd parted as the nurse emerged through the doors, a blanket slipping slightly to reveal a face beneath, a young boy, no older than 10. His eyes were glassy, pupils dilated, and he gasped for air. Blood trickled from a gash on his forehead. "Who is that?" Judge Henley asked, his voice tightening with recognition as he edged closer. Mary took a sharp breath, her hands curling into fists. It's Kyle, my brother," she whispered, eyes glistening with tears. Cold dread flooded Peter's chest. "Your brother? Why was he— He shouldn't be here. He should have been safe." Mary's voice cracked, unraveling in front of everyone. Adam's eyes flared with something darker. "This is a mistake. You're all getting it wrong. He's not just a casualty." His voice sliced through the panic, steady and cold. "He's part of the plan." "What plan?" James snapped, fists clenched at his sides, ready to fight. But before Adam could respond, Kyle coughed violently, the sound a horrible rasp that echoed in the silence that had fallen. The nurse dropped to her knees beside the boy, her hands working furiously. "Stay with us, honey. We're going to take care of you." Suddenly, a loud beep erupted from the monitors lining the walls, lights flashing. "Code Blue, we need assistance in the ER." The announcement echoed, sending shockwaves through the crowd. "Please, no," Mary shouted, hands clasped together desperately. "He can't die. I didn't mean for him." But Peter couldn't breathe. Something was wrong. The way the pieces of this family fit together was like a twisted puzzle. "Mary, what did you mean when you said your brother shouldn't be here? What happened?" "Enough!" Adam shouted, voice low and menacing. "This has gone too far." With blinding speed, he lunged toward the nurse, aiming for the boy. But Peter stumbled forward, instinct kicking in. "No!" he screamed, and the next moment was a blur. He shoved Adam back, the knife glinting in the chaos. But just then, with a deafening bang, an explosion echoed through the hospital. The lights flickered violently, plunging them into darkness for a split second. When the lights returned, everything changed. Mary's expression shifted, eyes brimming with something fierce and sudden. "You don't get to do this!" she screamed at Adam, voice fierce and powerful. "You're not my father!" That truth shot through the hallway like a lightning strike, silencing everyone. "What?" Judge Henley's voice trembled, fear and disbelief like poison coating his words. Mary's hands flared, and the power ignited in her eyes, illuminating the shadows. "I am the one who made the deal. I saved him. I put my brother in danger to protect you all. Peter's heart raced. What are you saying? But before she could respond, the lights flickered again, and the world spun. Suddenly, figures emerged from the darkness. More than just staff. Figures in uniforms, police officers bursting in with authority of hammers crashing against glass. Everyone, step back! We're here to take control, one shouted, scanning the chaos. Why are you here? James shouted, panic spreading like an infection. An emergency situation reported. We need to secure the area. But Mary looked horrified. No, you can't. They don't understand. The weight of everything fell heavily on Peter as he pieced it all together. Mary had a power they didn't understand. Her brother was alive, but the stakes were skyrocketing. Trust shattered like fragments. What had happened in the dark corners of their stories? What kind of truth did they carry? In a world so buried in secrets and lies, how much more were they willing to lose? As darkness loomed around them, the flickering lights cast shadows of doubt. Peter's gaze locked on Mary, desperate for answers, fearful of what it might mean. He wondered, was this the moment they spiraled too far down? What did Father mean in this wild storm of revelations? And as the officers moved deeper into the chaos, Peter knew one thing. Nothing was going to be the same again. The room was a kaleidoscope of emotions, fear and confusion swirling like a storm. Just moments ago, Mary's revelation shocked them all. But now, the chaos thrummed with a life of its own. Peter glanced around, heart racing. The officers danced through the chaos, minds too focused to notice the ticking bomb they were all sitting on. Listen! Mary yelled, her voice slicing through the confusion, tears spilling down her cheeks. Kyle, he's in danger because of me. What do you mean? Peter pressed, but the words felt lodged in his throat. Adam laughed, an unsettling sound, void of warmth. Oh, Mary, sweet girl, you saved nothing. You merely chose your place in this twisted game. With that, he stepped closer to her, an intruder in her moment of vulnerability. Then, just as the air felt suffocating, a sudden crack echoed from the left. A sharp, breathless scream followed. Someone had collapsed. A nurse staggered back, blood leaking from her arm. The crowd gasped, panic surging anew. Was this the moment they'd all feared? Help her! Jane shouted, rushing to the nurse as Peter hung back, feeling helpless. The chaos was now growing like a monstrous wave, rolling over them all. Not her, Adam smeared, voice like ice. You should be worrying about the real danger. All of you are in it now. What do you know? James's voice shook with anger. The tension thickened. Fear clawed at Peter's chest. Everything about this night felt wrong. Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting shadows across the room. A figure slipped through, a blur in the corner of Peter's eye. He turned, and there stood a woman, her features barely visible. Instinct kicked in, a creeping suspicion tightening around him. Is that Mom? Mary's voice trembled, breaking through the chaos, sounding a million miles away. The woman stepped forward, a ghost from the past. It was like seeing a miracle. But instead of joy, dread sank deep. You were never supposed to find out, she whispered, her tone icy, sending chills down Peter's spine. The room descended. What are you doing here? The intensity of the moment crackled like electricity. I'm here to clean up your mess, she snapped, fixing her gaze on Adam with fierce intensity. You were supposed to stay away from her. Peter's heart sank deeper. It wasn't just about Mary anymore. Kyle remained sprawled on the floor, eyes fluttering, and panic spilled over the edges as another gasp tore through the crowd. What did you do to him? But amid the madness, Mary reached for her brother. And that's when everything changed. She lunged forward, the space around them warped by fear and desperation. Adam moved, hand trembling, knife glinting ominously. "Get away from him!" Mary screamed. But everything happened too fast. In one blinding moment, the lights buzzed and extinguished, plunging them into darkness. And that's when they heard it. A loud bang, a deafening explosion that rocked the foundation of the hospital. A fire ignited, flames licking the walls, heat radiating like a furnace as sirens howled outside. "Run!" a nurse yelled, voice breaking, panic breaking through every corner. In that instant, everything splintered. People scrambled, screaming. Maria cried out as everyone rushed past. But as Peter turned to follow, Mary's hand gripped his. "No, we can't leave him." But before their eyes, in the flickering shadows, something shifted. The knife clattered to the ground with a final thud, and Adam, they all watched as he straightened, eyes glowing with an unbearable intensity. "Let go," he snarled, locking eyes with Mary, raw rage bubbling to the surface. "You don't know what you've done." The truth twisted painfully. Peter gaped, heart pounding. What had just happened? And standing there, in the chaos, everything he believed crumbled like ash. In this moment of despair, he realized that the real threat was right inside their midst, and the lines of family, loyalty, and betrayal were forever blurred. "Run," he shouted, but the words felt hollow. As smoke filled the air, a new nightmare threatened to consume them all. And Peter charged into the fray, knowing the storm was just beginning. In the midst of it all, he couldn't shake the feeling that their fates were intertwined in ways none of them understood. And just like that, darkness fell again. The room surged with uncertainty. Peter felt the heat from the flames licking at the walls, but all he could see were the wide, terrified eyes of Mary, staring not at her brother, but at Adam with whispered horror. "You're not my father." She repeated, almost like a spell, as if it co. Adam roared, taking a threatening step forward, knife glimmering. But before he could move, the lights flickered again, illuminating the chaos, and something shifted in the atmosphere. Then it happened, almost too fast to believe. From the corner of the room, a voice sliced through the panic, firm and steady. "Everyone, step back!" A new figure appeared. It was Officer Daniels, the town's police chief, a man known for his brazen demeanor and no-nonsense approach. He stepped into the chaos, eyes scanning the crowd, his face taut with concern. "Stand down, Adam," he commanded, voice booming over the alarm bells. "I've got the situation here." "What are you doing here?" Adam's voice dripped with disdain. "I'm here to protect everyone," Daniels replied, muscles coiling for whatever was to come. But what happened next sent shockwaves through Peter's chest. From the crowd emerged another face that made everyone freeze. It was Samantha, Peter's childhood friend. Peter's heart raced. She had always been the spark in their group, but now her presence held an ominous weight. "Daniels," she said, trembling and pale. "You need to see this." "What is it?" the chief asked, his tone sharp. Samantha reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, the screen slick with blood. "I found this in the alley behind the hospital." Everyone leaned in as she played a video. A shaky recording flickered to life, showing a confrontation that left no doubt in Peter's mind about the truth he had lived under. It depicted Adam and another shadowy figure, a man cloaked in darkness, exchanging frantic whispers. "We can't let her find out," Adam said, fear crackling in his voice. "She'll ruin everything. The deal was never just about Mary." The room held its breath. Each syllable carried like a hammer, reshaping their understanding. But before anyone could react, Kyle gasped, his small body jerking sharply on the floor. Everyone turned toward him, panic washing over Mary's face. "Help him!" she screamed, rushing forward. But it was too late. Before they could reach him, Kyle's eyes flared wide, and he spoke words that left everyone paralyzed, in a voice that wasn't his own. "You should have kept your mouth shut, Mary." A collective gasp erupted. The air felt heavy, squishing the breath from Peter's lungs. Kyle's little chest twisted as he coughed. Then he collapsed, eyes rolling back. "No." Mary screamed, but the room erupted into a frenzy. "Get him out!" the nurses cried, rushing to his side. Peter watched, frozen, experiencing the heartlessness of reality collide with a truth he never saw coming. "Mary, what did you do?" Judge Henley stumbled, his voice a shaky whisper, filled with disbelief. Adam's face darkened. This was never about saving her. It was about power. "You thought you knew my daughter, but she's so much more than you realized." The implications hung in the air like a noose tightening around Peter's neck. "No, this can't be real," James yelled, stepping back in shock. But the words crashed through him harder than any wave could. Video ended, and the room was plunged back into chaos. But Peter felt his world waver. Everything he believed shifted underfoot. Mary was not just a casualty, but a player in a dangerous game. He stumbled back, unable to comprehend. "What are you talking about?" Then, in the thick of it, she turned to him, eyes fierce and drenched in tears. "I didn't mean for this to happen, Peter, but I had no choice. He is my father, and I'm the one pulling the strings." The ground fell away from him. The answers he sought spiraled into 1,000 questions instead. Could it be true? Was Mary entangled deep in schemes beyond anyone's grasp? Amidst the chaos, with sirens wailing and smoke filling the air, Peter thought one thing: nothing was as it seemed. With a pulse racing, he realized he had to find out. They all needed to understand what this meant for everyone. As the room spun, fear gripped him. The storm outside wasn't the only one raging. He fixed his eyes on Mary, knowing that whatever truth lay ahead would alter everything they believed. Would he stand with her or against her? And as the officers closed in, shadows blurred in the flickering lights, a new storm was brewing, one that would consume them all. The room pulsed with chaos, smoke curling through the air like a serpent. Peter's heart raced as Mary's revelations spun in his mind like a whirlwind. "I'm the one pulling the strings." The words hung heavy, lingering like the acrid smell of burning debris. Panic swirled, a thick fog shadowing their thoughts. "Mary, what do you mean by that?" Peter struggled to keep his voice steady, but fear threaded through his words. The ground beneath him felt unstable, and the walls of the hospital closed in. Adam straightened, eyes glittering with something that made the hairs on the back of Peter's neck stand up. "You're playing a dangerous game, sweetheart," he smeared, the knife glimmering dangerously in his hand. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the corridor outside, rattling the windows. It shattered the moment, slicing through the tension like glass. The officers jumped, turning toward the noise. "What now?" someone muttered, dread thickening the air. Mary's eyes darted toward the doors, widening in horror. "No, he can't be here. He said he'd stay away." "Who?" James asked, frustration boiling over as confusion seized everyone. "Mary, what is going on?" Before she could answer, a figure burst through the doorway, silhouetted by the flashing red lights. A man stumbled in, clothes torn and blood-streaked, eyes wide with terror. "They're coming! They're coming for you!" The chaos erupted again, voices overlapping, breaths hitching in fear. The man gasped for air, and the room froze. "Who?" Peter urged, his stomach tightening. "Your father." The man's voice trembled, and the words sent a jolt of disbelief through Peter. He felt like he'd been punched in the gut. "Which father?" Mary shouted, hands shaking. "Adam or my real one?" Before anyone could process the madness, the ground trembled again. Then came an explosion of light outside, the night sky bursting into a kaleidoscope of colors. The building shook as something, huge and destructive, rocketed overhead. A sinister shadow swallowing the light. Peter's heart sank. "Get down!" Officer Daniels yelled, his voice rising above the chaos. People dropped to their knees, confusion and fear manifesting like a storm. But Mary, she stood frozen, eyes locked on the chaos, face pale as a sheet. If he's here, no one is safe. Suddenly, the doors burst open again. Another figure appeared, this one familiar, a woman with wild hair and frantic eyes. "No! Get away from him!" she screamed, rushing toward the man who had just entered. "I told you to stay back." Peter's heart sank as he recognized her. It was Helen, a long-lost friend of Mary's. But what was she doing here? As she rushed past everyone, Helen shoved the man aside, eyes blazing with fear. "You don't understand, Peter. They want you." "Who?" he shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. In the chaos, Helen turned to Adam. "You made this happen. You used her. You killed him." The accusation tore through the crowd, gasps vibrating like a ripple of shock. Out of nowhere came a sound, an eerie roar that drowned their screams. Fire blazed through the doorway, flames flickering like hungry wolves. Peter's breath hitched. This was far worse than a family feud. Then, in an instant, revelation struck like lightning. As Hooper, that's what they called him, stood trembling, Peter caught a glimpse of the truth. "You didn't pull the strings, Mary," he shouted, anger and betrayal surfacing. "You walked into this willingly." Her eyes flared with anguish, and for a moment it shattered the chaos around them. "You can't understand. I thought I was saving everyone." But then came the earth-shattering twist. Suddenly, the shadow loomed larger as fire engulfed everything. The lights dimmed, the noise ebbed, and in that blink of darkness, Peter felt a presence behind him, cold and sinister. "Leave her alone," came a voice, low and sharp. And there, silhouetted in the flames, stood a figure in black, black as night. A mask obscured their face, but the power radiating from their presence showed no fear. "Welcome back, Mary," the figure said, words smooth like silk wrapped around a knife. Peter's blood ran cold, disbelief setting fire to his mind. Mary staggered back, blood draining from her face. "What do you want?" But the figure didn't answer. Instead, they raised a hand, and in that very moment, the walls erupted. A demise of confusion shattered everything, and then the world exploded. It wasn't just Adam or Mary or even the chaos surrounding them. It was something deeper, a truth that twisted silently in the shadows. And as the flame engulfed the room, Peter realized nothing in this town was as it seemed, and as secrets unraveled, so did their lives. What had started as a storm was evolving into a tempest, and who would survive the downfall? Chaos erupted as flames licked hungrily at the walls, and smoke filled the air like an angry fog. Peter's heart hammered against his ribs as he looked at Mary, wide-eyed and trembling. The ominous figure in black was still there, a shadow of dread, unyielding in its presence. "Get down!" Officer Daniels barked, but those words faded into the chaos. The room felt like it was collapsing around them. "What do you want?" Mary shouted, voice quaking. The figure smiled, but it wasn't warm. "I just want to help you reclaim what's yours." The words hung in the air, thick and heavy. Peter was about to respond when another crash echoed from the hallway. shaking. Suddenly, one of the new arrivals, a woman with wild hair and a fierce gaze, barreled through the crowd and straight for Mary. "I told you to stay away," she screamed, pointing a finger at Mary. "You have no idea what you're getting into." "Who are you?" Mary stammered, confusion painted on her face. The woman growled, "I'm the one you left behind. You didn't think you could just walk away from this, did you?" The pieces skittered across Peter's mind, nothing fitting into the puzzle. Who was this woman, and how was she tied to Mary? Before he could ask, she turned to Adam. "You've ruined everything." "I don't know what you think you know," Adam spat back, voice low. Silence fell, crackling like electricity. A breathless moment passed when a loud bang rattled the far wall. Sparks flew. The fire crackled, and the heat surged, but no one could move. A horrible thought crept into Peter's mind. What if they were all trapped? At that moment, Kyle, still lying there, shifted. Everyone paused, breath held tight. "Mom?" he whispered, eyes barely open, searching. In that fragile second, the room seemed to hold its breath. "Kyle!" Mary gasped, rushing to him. But as she did, the figure in black advanced, stepping closer. The woman halted, eyes narrowing. "No! Stop!" But it was too late. The figure lunged forward, seized Mary's arm, and pulled her back. "You can't save him. You need to save yourself first." The words landed like a lead weight. Peter felt the urgency shift, terror spinning out of control. "Let her go!" The figure chuckled, the sound slicing through the tension. Then, in one swift motion, they tossed Mary aside and turned to face the crowd. "You all believe you know the truth? Let me show you just how deep this goes." In that second, as the flames flickered, something shattered. The figure pushed back the hood, revealing their face, Mary's face, twisted and dark, yet unmistakably her. Gasps erupted around the room. "What? How?" Peter stammered, his heart racing a mile a minute. "You thought I was gone," the doppelganger hissed, voice a cruel mockery. "But I've been here all along, playing my part." Mary fell to her knees, disbelief etched across her features. "No, this can't be! You're not real!" "Yes, I am," the other Mary snapped, eyes blazing with fierce conviction. "I am everything you wish to forget. I am your shadow, the pieces of you that you tried to bury." The room trembled, the flames around them reflecting in horrified eyes. Peter's mind spun. What kind of nightmare had they stepped into? And just like that, as the walls crumbled and the truth shattered, the original Mary collapsed, gripping her brother. She looked fragile, small against the chaos. "I wanted to save you." The figure laughed again, and it twisted Peter's gut. "She never could. You're all blinded by your own fears. I'm the one who made the real sacrifice." And with that, the reality warped around them. Time felt suspended, the air heavy with disbelief. Who was the real Mary? Who had they trusted? The storm had only begun, and the darkness loomed large. Outside, thunder growled like a beast awakening. And as they all stood on that precipice, understanding dawned on Peter. Everything they thought they knew had just exploded. What kind of truth was waiting there in the flames? And who would survive the coming storm?